We mentioned Declan Rice earlier. What's the actual, just to confirm, what's the talk on Declan Rice? Is it definitely, or 90% or 99%? Because Stuart mentioned Man City, not as a possibility, but that you were
I'm intrigued. Yeah. I would be intrigued for no other reason.
At the moment, as far as I'm aware, the only serious interest in Declan Rice is from Arsenal and from Bayern Munich, but I think his preference is to stay in the Premier League. I think his preference is to stay in London. I think his preference is to go to Arsenal. So I think at the moment, I think that is most likely. Obviously, there's the issue of a fee. I think Jim White on talkSPORT a couple of weeks ago said that West Ham wanted £100 million up front, rising to 120. That's not really the type of maths that Arsenal would usually do. I would expect them to come in with a low ball offer, maybe £80 million up front, rising to 100. Chelsea, there's a link there because, of course, he was there as a teenager. I'm not sure that their treatment of his pal Mason Mount is going to make that a particularly palatable journey that he wants to go back, and I think Chelsea have got other targets as well. I think Declan Rice goes to Arsenal.
Okay, let me put this scenario to you. We've been talking about this in Prague, actually, in the week. Dean Ash and I were talking about it. Mason Mount to Manchester United is a distinct possibility, right?
Again, it will come down to a price. Chelsea have got their price. Manchester United is lower. Mason Mount, as I understand it, is keen to make the move now to Old Trafford.
What if, because Mount is going there, Declan Rice, and they are close friends, what if he thinks, hang on a minute, what about Manchester United? What if Man United then put in a bid for him and Declan Rice looks at it and think, me and Mason together, I'd have a bit of that.
I think United would love to try and sign Declan Rice, but again, it comes down to economics. We know they want a number 9. They want a centre-back as well. Kim Min-jae at Napoli is a target. I think if they sign Mason Mount, I don't see them spending that kind of money on another midfielder.
Okay, so we created this scenario in our heads, Dean Ashton and I. You can imagine what kind of night that was, where Manchester United sign Mason Mount, Declan Rice, and Harry Kane.
Yes.
Do they become title contenders?
I think. We'll put it this way: where'd they finish this year? Third.
Yeah.
Third. They've only got 2 teams above them, as it stands. And those 3 will take them a lot closer to the 2 above them, without a doubt. And around certain quarters, some people think Arsenal won't be as strong next year.
I'm one of those.
So there you go. So maybe they've only got 1 team above them. You know Liverpool are going to be stronger, or Chelsea will be stronger. But I'm playing devil's advocate here. As it finishes this year, there's 2 above them. And one of those you think Arsenal might find it difficult next year.
West Ham will have £100 million, probably more, actually. And I think winning the Europa Conference League ups his fee, to be honest. I think it might squeeze Arsenal out. But who do they spend it on, West Ham?
Well, we ran a story earlier today that Edson Alvarez is a possible contender, although I think Borussia Dortmund are in for him as well. A name that was mentioned to me this afternoon was João Paulinho at Fulham.
Good player.
As somebody that West Ham have got serious interest in. And you can understand why West Ham would have interest in him. Then there's your pal James Ward-Prowse. He wants to get back in the Premier League.
James Ward-Prowse, my lord. Thank you.
And I think West Ham have certainly got an interest in him, as a couple of other Premier League clubs. So I think West Ham will be busy. But yeah, just keep an eye on that Paulinho link.
Is Ward-Prowse to West Ham, is that the only club in for him?
Newcastle have got him on their list, as I understand it. I don't believe he's at the top of that list. And again, Southampton, I think, are asking for quite a substantial fee. Tottenham have been mentioned as well, and you could see him improving their midfield. Wolves would like to sign him, as I understand it, but they think he might go to a club higher up the food chain. So I think James Ward-Prowse will get a Premier League club, but because of the asking price, I could just see this one dragging on a bit into the final weeks of the window.
I get the impression with James that he might even stay at Southampton. Do you get that at all? No, you think it's a done deal? I just think he's got such a connection with that football club. He's the captain of it, and he's the driving power of it. If I was Southampton and you're looking to bounce back, if I was the manager, I'd say, give me 1 season.
I think he feels a bit let down by what's happened at St Mary's and the way that the new owners have run the football club. He signed a new contract. He handcuffed himself really because of the wages, and I think he feels that they failed him with what's gone on there this season.
And it's interesting because you talk about West Ham and Tottenham being 2 of the clubs there who might be in for him, and West Ham with Europa League football, and Tottenham with no European football. West Ham suddenly become a much better proposition, don't they?
They certainly do. I mean, if they'd have lost that final a couple of nights ago, no European football, and teams would look at that and think, well, hang on a minute, you finished under halfway in the division, had a tough season and whatever. You're exactly right. Another campaign in Europe, a decent, proposition for a lot of players, I would suspect.
Moises Casado, he signed a new contract, didn't he, in January?
He did.
Doesn't mean anything, does it, because he's going?
No release clause in that contract, unlike Alexis McAllister, so they're going to demand big money, Brighton. But I think they're resigned themselves to the fact that CAICEDO will go. They took quite an calculated punt, if you like, by turning down that money from Arsenal in January. They felt, Brighton, that more clubs would come to the table come the summer window, and they may well be right, because Arsenal are still there. I wouldn't rule out Arsenal signing both Declan Rice and CAICEDO, because we know that Granit Xhaka is going to leave Arsenal, and midfield was an area where they looked a bit light at the end of the season anyway. But Chelsea certainly are a big part of the conversation. My understanding is that talks have already taken place between the two clubs. Brighton have chucked in Levi Colwill, having had a £30 million offer rejected for him, and said, "What can we do? Some kind of part exchange deal?" Again, as I said to you earlier in the programme, they're not easy to do. Levi Colwill, if he doesn't get guarantees of game time at Chelsea, he would be keen to leave, and he'd be very keen to go back to Brighton on a permanent basis.
Question for yourself: excess players at Chelsea, who do you think might be leaving them, and how much excess have they got?
They've got a lot of excess, I think that's fair to say, and I think what's interesting is a lot of that excess is homegrown, and we know how precious a commodity homegrown players are, but Mason Mount will have to be sold because he's not going to sign a new contract. Conor Gallagher, I think, will go, and there's a lot of clubs in for him, the likes of West Ham and Newcastle, maybe even Brighton themselves. Trevor Chalobah is a player who's attracting interest, not just from this country, but from Serie A. Callum Hudson-Odoi, who's disappointed during his latest loan spell, I think they'll look to cash in on him. And Ruben Loftus-Cheek was already in talks with AC Milan about taking a pay cut to go there. Maldini's departure from Milan has put that deal on hold, but that's 5 academy products that Chelsea are willing to let walk out the door this summer.
Yeah. Liverpool have got McAllister in, and I expressed some reservations with that, and let me qualify it, because if it depends who they sign next, Liverpool, because I think their midfield needs serious improvement. This experiment of Trent Alexander-Arnold going into midfield from right back, I like it a lot. I think he's perfect for that. But to me, I'm looking at Alexis McAllister and thinking, where exactly do you fit in with that midfield? Because you need some more solid defensive midfielders. I think McAllister isn't that. You look at his goal rate, and I heard Laura Woods and Ali McCoy talk about his goals on breakfast. He got 10 goals, didn't he, last season for Brighton? But some of them were penalties, and he ain't going to take the penalties at Liverpool. He ain't going to take that off Mo Salah.
True.
So that goal return necessarily won't be there. I mean, it's an intriguing signing. I'm not saying it's a bad signing. It's an intriguing signing, but I only think it becomes a brilliant signing if they then sign maybe 2 midfielders to go in there with him.
And I think they will do that. I mentioned earlier, I think they do want another 2 midfielders. I think what attracted Liverpool to McAllister was the price. We're told it could rise to as much as £55 million. I think the upfront fee is much less than that, so it's an extra body in midfield. Obviously, James Milner is moving on. You mentioned Keita have moved on. Jordan Henderson is not in the first flush of youth either. I'll be interested to see what happens to him next summer. Maybe he might follow Lallana and Milner down to the south coast, because, of course, he's big mates with Adam Lallana. But they do want a couple more midfielders. They're looking at the German market because, of course, their new sporting director has big links to the Bundesliga. So I think this will be the first of a big midfield revamp by Liverpool. Is McAllister a player who can take them back into title contention and to challenging for major honours? We'll find out. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think he's got a lot of growing still to do.
My perception is whether Liverpool are title contenders or not, or hinge on not who comes through the door. And I know there's been a lot of talk and bluster about who's coming through the door. More importantly, the players that are there now, whether they can rekindle the form that we know they got. You got Van Dijk. If he gets back to the form he was, if Salah got back, they've got a front 5 that are quite incredible on paper. You know, Gakpo and Diaz and Salah and the like. You know, Jota. All have just been under par, haven't they? Now, if you've got a front 5 and options like of that front 5 in your team, in any team in the Premier League, and they find the form that you know Jota can, you know Salah can, the answer might be within the squad, not from outside it. From outside it will certainly help, make no mistake. But if they rekindle the form that they've shown over their Liverpool careers, whether they can collectively, they will be a major force again next year.
Very quick one, Maddison to Newcastle.
I think Maddison to Spurs looks more likely at this stage. We mentioned this morning on talkSPORT that Tottenham are the first club to really open talks with Leicester. Again, they want big money. I'm told it could be as much as £60 million. Now, based on what I've said about Newcastle not maybe going as mad in the market as maybe people expect, I don't see them spending anywhere near £60 million on James Maddison.
Interesting. We'll see. The summer's got a lot to bring as far as transfers are concerned. You doing the notebook and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Notebook on the talkSPORT website. Daily updates from July the 1st. Updates from July the 1st with White and Jordan. It's going to be manic. Do you know what? The window doesn't actually open until next Wednesday, I think. It feels like it's been open for 6 weeks.
It does. I asked you, didn't I? I said, the transfer window, is it open yet? Because I was convinced it wasn't. It isn't, but it looks like it is. Crazy. We've got some breaking news. Leeds have confirmed that owner Andrea Rajazani has reached an agreement to sell the club to 49ers Enterprises. They're the owners of the NFL side, San Francisco 49ers, of course. Club statement said this: both parties continue to work through the details and further updates will be provided soon. All our focus remains on a quick return to the Premier League. Thank you for your continued support. Marching on together. But agreement apparently has been reached for Leeds to be sold to 49ers Enterprises.